The morning I stopped pretending, I was standing in the kitchen of a house I had bought myself, holding a mug that said, "World's Okayest Boss," a joke gift from my creative director 2 Christmases ago. And the man I had been married to for 9 years was telling me he had finally found the love of his life. Her name was Megan. She worked at a coffee shop in Bishop Arts. She was, and I'm quoting him directly, uncomplicated. He said that word like it was an award. I'm 33. My name is Hannah Reeves. I run a branding agency in Dallas called Field & Foundry that did about $3.1 million in revenue last year. And I built it out of my second bedroom in 2019 with a laptop my mother co-signed for, and a list of 17 cold leads I scraped off LinkedIn during my lunch breaks at my old job. I tell you the numbers up front because they matter to what happened next. They mattered to my husband too. He just never let me know how much. The mug in my hand had gone cold by the time he finished his little speech. He'd rehearsed it. You could tell by the way he kept resetting his hands on the counter, palms down, fingers spread, like he was bracing himself against turbulence. He said he wasn't happy. He said he hadn't been happy for a long time. He said Megan made him feel like a man instead of an accessory. That was the line that almost made me laugh. An accessory? Like I had been wearing him on my wrist for 9 years instead of paying his health insurance after he got laid off in 2021 and never quite landed anywhere again. I didn't laugh. I smiled. A small, polite, conference room smile, the same one I used on clients who pitched me ideas I knew wouldn't work. And I said, "Thank you for telling me, Ryan. I need a minute." I walked down the hall to the office at the back of the house, the one with the south-facing window I had specifically searched for when we were house hunting in 2021. I closed the door very softly, the way you close a door when someone in the next room is sleeping and you don't want to wake them. Then I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and called my chief of staff, a woman named Priya Mendarata, who had been with me since the agency was 4 people in a WeWork on McKinney Avenue. "Priya," I said, "I need you to do 3 things for me in the next 10 minutes. Freeze Ryan's company card, all authorizations, all reimbursement queues, all vendor accounts he's a signatory on. Then call Lauren Beck and tell her I need to come in tomorrow morning, first slot available. Tell her it's the conversation we've been preparing for." Priya didn't ask. That's why she's worth what I pay her. She just said, "On it. Are you safe?" "I'm fine," I said. And the strange thing was, I meant it. Lauren Beck is my divorce attorney. I'd had her number saved for 14 months. Not because I was planning anything. Because in March of last year, I went out to dinner with my best friend Caroline, and somewhere around the second glass of wine, she put her hand on my wrist and said, very quietly, "Han, you have a lot to protect. Just have a name in your phone. That's all I'm saying." Caroline is a family practice physician in Plano. She doesn't waste her words. I got Lauren's number from her the next morning and put it in my contacts under L.E. Beck Accountant because Ryan had a habit of glancing at my phone when it lit up on the counter. You need to understand who I was before that Tuesday because otherwise none of this makes sense. I grew up in Tyler, Texas, which is a town that smells like roses for 1 month a year and pine pulp the other 11. My dad worked at a tire plant for 26 years. My mother taught 3rd grade. We weren't broke and we weren't comfortable. We were the kind of family where my mother kept a coupon binder in the glove compartment and my father once drove an hour and a half to a different Lowe's because the riding mower was $47 cheaper there. Money sat at our dinner table the way it sits at a lot of dinner tables in East Texas. You didn't talk about it, but it shaped where you sat. I left for UT Austin on a partial scholarship and a federal loan. Worked 2 jobs through school, graduated in 2014 with a degree in advertising and $29,000 in debt, and took a job as a junior account coordinator at a mid-size firm in Dallas that paid me $42,000 a year. I lived in a 1-bedroom on Greenville Avenue with a roommate, a rescue cat named Pickle, and a financial spreadsheet I updated every Sunday night. I paid off my loans in 4 years. I didn't take a vacation that wasn't a wedding until I was 28. I met Ryan Calloway at a friend's housewarming in early 2015. He was 28, working as a regional rep for an industrial parts distributor, making $68,000 a year. And he had the kind of handshake that made you trust him before you'd thought about whether you should. He was funny in a self-deprecating way that I now recognize as a tactic but at the time read as humility. On our second date, he asked me what I wanted my life to look like in 10 years, and when I told him my own company, a house with a real porch, the kind of financial cushion my parents never had, he didn't laugh or change the subject, or get that subtle pulled-back look I'd seen on the faces of other men. He said, "You're going to do all of it." He said it like a fact. I fell hard. I want to be honest about that. I fell hard for a man who said the right thing on a second date, and for 9 years I told myself that was enough evidence of character to override anything else I might notice. We got married in October 2016 at a venue outside Fredericksburg that my mother worked at because she'd never been somewhere that nice. The wedding cost $41,000. I paid for 33 of it. Ryan's parents contributed 5. My parents contributed 3 from a savings account my father had been adding to since I was 9. I have never once mentioned that math to anyone except Caroline, and even with Caroline I cried when I said it. We rented an apartment in Lower Greenville for the first 3 years. Ryan's career drifted. He left the parts distributor in 2018 for a sales role at a logistics startup that imploded 8 months later. He spent 6 months consulting, which mostly meant having long lunches with old college friends who were also consulting. He landed at a mid-tier B2B software company in early 2020, making $78,000, which felt like a relief at the time. My agency was growing. By the end of 2020, I had 4 employees and was billing about $600,000 a year, working from my second bedroom in pajama pants and a blazer for Zoom calls. We bought the house in early 2021. 3 bedrooms, a real porch, a backyard with a pecan tree that dropped nuts all over the deck every October. The down payment was $110,000. I put down 94 of it. The mortgage was in my name because Ryan's credit was sitting at a 681 from a car loan he'd been late on twice in 2019. He said it embarrassed him. I told him it didn't matter, which is something women say in marriages all the time and almost never mean the way it sounds. By 2023, the agency had grown to 17 people, 2 major retainers with national consumer brands I can't name in the story, but you'd recognize, and a salary for me of $240,000 plus distributions. I had a CPRA, a brokerage account, and a business reserve that hovered around $600,000. I drove a 4-year-old Acura. I bought my work clothes at the same 3 places. I cut my own bangs. Ryan stayed at the software company. He kept telling me he was due for a promotion. He kept not getting one. By the spring of 2024, he was making $91,000 a year and had developed a habit of going to the gym 4 nights a week, which I told myself was healthy and good and didn't examine any further. The first thing I noticed was the cologne, not that he was wearing it. Ryan had worn the same Aqua di Parma since our 2nd anniversary, but that he was running out of it faster. I bought him a new bottle in March, and by the end of April it was already half gone. I noticed because I was the one who reordered things in our house. He didn't notice that I noticed. He didn't notice that I noticed a lot of things. I started keeping a note in my phone on May 7th. I labeled it House Projects, so that if he glanced over my shoulder it would mean nothing. The first entry said, 2's 5 Savals at 9 2000, 45 9 2 sets. Drove past LA Fitness. Lot empty of his car at 7:15. I'm a data person. I don't react to one data point. I waited for a pattern, and the pattern came in faster than I expected. By the end of June, I had 11 entries. Tuesdays and Thursdays, sometimes a Saturday morning, he called a long ride. He had recently bought a road bike, which was the second clue I should have caught earlier. He didn't ride it. It sat in our garage with the price sticker still on the seat post. I called Caroline on a Friday afternoon from my car in the parking lot of a Tom Thumb on Mockingbird. I had pulled over because I couldn't drive and have the conversation at the same time. I told her everything. The cologne, the gym lot, the bike, the way he'd started showering as soon as he came home instead of in the morning. I talked for 20 minutes. Caroline listened the way she listens to patients, which is to say she let me finish. When I was done, she said, "Han, I love you." You already know. I did. I had known since the cologne, probably. Maybe earlier. There's a way of knowing something with your body before your mind catches up, and my body had been knowing for weeks. I went to see Lauren Beck the following Tuesday. Her office was on the 18th floor of a building on McKinney, and it smelled like coffee and clean paper. She was in her early 50s, grey streak through dark hair, the kind of person who didn't smile unnecessarily. I liked her immediately. I told her what I knew and what I didn't. She asked me 3 questions. Did we have a prenup? What was titled in whose name? And did I have access to all of our financial accounts? The answers were no, mostly mine, and I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Texas is a community property state, she said, which means anything earned or acquired during the marriage is presumed joint, regardless of whose name it's in. But there are arguments around separate property, especially around business built with traceable individual effort. We'll need a forensic accountant. Do you have one? I did. His name was Walt Bergstrom, and he'd been doing my agency's books since year 2. Walt was 61, ex-IRS, and the calmest human being I had ever met. I called him from Lauren's office parking garage and asked him to run a deeper look at everything Ryan had touched in our financial life for the last 24 months. Personal cards, joint cards, the supplementary card I'd given him on the agency account in 2022 for client dinners when he occasionally came along to industry events. Walt called me back on a Thursday at 6:40 in the evening. I was standing at the kitchen island when my phone lit up, and I knew from the timing alone that whatever he was about to say was going to require me to put down the glass of wine I had just poured. "Hannah," he said, "are you sitting down? Tell me." He walked me through it. The supplementary card I'd given Ryan for client entertainment. He had spent $46,400 on it over 20 months. Of that, Walt could identify about $3,100 as a legitimate client expense. The rest was a hotel in Galveston in August of last year, $2,400. A weekend at a resort outside Marble Falls in November, $1,400. Dinners at restaurants in neighborhoods we never went to. A jewelry purchase at North Park Center in December for $1,900, and I want you to understand something. He had given me a pair of earrings that Christmas from Kendra Scott that cost $96. I had thanked him and worn them to my mother's house for Christmas Eve dinner. "There's more," Walt said. "There was a flight to Cabo in February, 2 passengers, $1,600 charged to the agency card. He had told me it was a sales off-site. I had asked him how it went. He had said it was fine. The food was terrible. He was glad to be home. The total on the agency card was about $43,000 in non-business charges over 20 months. Then Walt went into the joint household account, the Chase card we used for groceries and gas and Target runs, and found another $9,800 in charges I couldn't account for. Restaurants on Tuesdays and Thursdays, a spa in Uptown. A weekend in Austin he had told me was a bachelor party for a college friend, $52,800. That was the number. $52,800 of my money, my company's money, spent on another woman over 20 months, while he sat across from me at our kitchen table eating dinners. I'd cooked and complained about his commute. I want to tell you something I have never said out loud to anyone, including Caroline. I sat down on the kitchen floor after I hung up with Walt. Not gracefully. I just sat down with my back against the dishwasher, and I put my forehead on my knees and I cried for about 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because when I lifted my head and looked at the microwave clock, I noted the time because I am the kind of person who notes things even when I'm falling apart. I cried for the earrings. I cried for the cowboy trip I'd never been on. I cried for the wedding I paid for, and the house I'd bought, and the version of me at 26 who told her father at his retirement party that she'd married a good one. I cried for 9 years of pajama pants and Zoom calls and Sunday night spreadsheets and 11 p.m. emails. And then I stopped. I got up. I washed my face in the half bath of the kitchen. I looked at myself in the mirror. Puffy eyes, no makeup, hair in the same ponytail I'd put it in at 6 a.m. And I thought about my mother in her 3rd grade classroom and my father at the tire plant and the coupon binder in the glove compartment, and I thought, no. That was the whole thought. Just no. Ryan came home at 7:50 that night. He kissed the top of my head. He asked what was for dinner. I had ordered Thai. We ate it at the island. He told me a long story about a co-worker who was annoying him. I made appropriate sounds in the appropriate places. After dinner, he went to the basement to watch a game. I sat on the couch with my laptop, and I started a new spreadsheet titled FFQ3 Review, so that if he walked in, it would mean nothing. And on it, I built the most detailed list of my life. The next morning, Lauren said, "We need to talk about how we do this. I want to skip ahead because the next 2 weeks of preparation are not the part of the story you need. What you need is what happened the following Wednesday evening when my mother-in-law called me at 8:14 p.m. Her name is Diane. She had spent 9 years treating me with the precise, polite distance of a woman who had been hoping her son would marry someone else. She had referred to me once at a family Thanksgiving in 2018 as Ryan's wife, while I was standing 6 feet away. She had never volunteered to help with a single holiday I hosted. She had given me a candle for my 30th birthday. The candle was unscented. When my phone showed her name that Wednesday night, I assumed it was a butt dial. I answered out of pure reflex. "Hannah," she said, and her voice was wrong. Not the careful neutral I was used to. It was a voice I'd never heard from her. Small, almost frightened. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to know I have not slept in 2 nights because of it." I sat down very slowly on the edge of my bed. "Ryan came over Sunday night," she said. "He told us, me and his father, that he's been seeing someone. He said her name is Megan, and she's 26. He said he's been in love with her since last summer. He said he's been in love with her since last summer. He said he's pregnant, 8 weeks. And he said he was going to tell you this weekend that he wants a divorce." The room was very quiet. I could hear the air handler kick on in the hallway. "He asked us for money," Diane said. "He asked us to lend him $40,000 to, quote, get on his feet, because he said the divorce was going to take a while and he didn't want to be financially dependent on you during it," he said. And here is where her voice changed completely into something I had never heard from her and probably will never hear again. "He said he'd been planning this for a year. He said he had been moving money carefully so you wouldn't notice." Hannah, I am so sorry. I have been a terrible mother-in-law to you, and I'm calling you because I cannot sit at my kitchen table knowing what I know and not tell you. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Then I said, "Diane, thank you. I need you to do one thing for me, and I need you to do it right now. Do not tell Ryan you called me. Do not tell him you know anything. Pretend the conversation Sunday night did not happen. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Then we will speak again next week." I hung up. I called Lauren. She picked up on the first ring even though it was 8:31 at night. I told her about Diane's call. I told her about the pregnancy. I told her about the $40,000 request to his parents and the phrase, "moving money carefully." Lauren was quiet for the length of 2 breaths. Then she said, "Hannah, we are filing Monday morning. I want you in my office Friday at 7 a.m. Bring everything Walt has. I'm going to have a temporary restraining order on marital assets drafted by Monday afternoon. Do not tell him anything before then. Live your normal life for 4 more days. Can you do that?" I could. I lived 4 of the most ordinary days of my adult life. I went to work. I had lunch with a client at Mi Cucina. I went to a yoga class on Wednesday night. I came home and asked Ryan how his day was. He told me a story about a new sales hire he didn't like. I nodded. I made pasta. We watched half an episode of a show we'd been working through, and he fell asleep on the couch like he always did. And I covered him with the throw blanket my mother had crocheted for our first anniversary. And I went to bed in the room I had decorated, and I slept the deepest sleep I'd had in months. Saturday morning, Ryan came into the kitchen at 9:15 in the pajama pants I'd bought him for Christmas. He poured himself coffee from the pot I'd made an hour earlier. He stood at the counter for a long moment, gathering himself, and I watched him do it, and I felt something in my chest that wasn't anger and wasn't grief. It was the steady, quiet feeling of a hand turning a key in a lock that was finally going to open. He told me about Megan. He used the word uncomplicated. He used the word real. He said he had not meant for this to happen. He said he had been unhappy for a long time, that the house felt like a museum, that I was always working, that I had become more interested in my company than in him. He said he hoped we could handle this with dignity. He said he thought we could probably work out the financial stuff between ourselves without making it ugly. I listened to all of it. I let him finish completely. I did not interrupt once. When he was done, I smiled at him. The conference room smile. The one I had been smiling at him, I realized now for at least the last 18 months. "Ryan," I said, "I appreciate you telling me. Excuse me for a minute." I went to the office. I closed the door. I called Priya. "Now," I said. "Already done," she said. I came back to the kitchen. He was still at the counter, looking, I want to say, confused. He had expected tears. He had expected pleading. He had maybe expected a fight. He had not expected me to walk back into the room and put my coffee cup down on the counter and look at him and say, "Ryan, I've been meeting with Lauren Beck since the beginning of July. Walt Bergstrom completed a forensic review of every account you've touched for the last 2 years. I have documentation of approximately $52,800 in personal charges you made to my business and to our joint accounts, including the Cabo trip, the jewelry from North Park, the resort in Marble Falls, and a spa in Uptown. Lauren is filing for divorce in Dallas County Monday morning. There will be a temporary restraining order on marital assets attached to the filing. Your agency card was deauthorized 11 minutes ago. The locksmith arrives at 1 o'clock this afternoon. The house is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. The down payment was 94% mine, and Walt has the paper trail. Your mother called me Wednesday. I know about Megan. I know she's pregnant. I know you asked your parents for $40,000 and used the phrase moving money carefully. You should call a lawyer." He went grey, not pale. Grey, like the color drained out of him in real time. He opened his mouth twice. Nothing came out the first time. The second time he said, "Hannah." I held up my hand. "There's one thing I want to say to you, and then I'm done talking for today. You looked at the life I built. The company, the house, the money, the way I get up at 5 a.m. and answer client emails before I've even brushed my teeth. And somewhere along the way, you decided all of it was a resource you could draw down. You decided I was too distracted to notice and too soft to fight back. You were wrong about the first thing for a while. You were never going to be right about the second thing." I picked my coffee back up. "Your suitcases are in the garage. They've been packed since Wednesday night. Caroline helped. You have until 1 o'clock. He left at 12:47. The locksmith was a man in his 60s named Earl who didn't ask questions. He changed every exterior lock on the house in 2 hours and 40 minutes. I tipped him $80. He looked at me in a way that made me think he had done a lot of these particular jobs and said, "Take care of yourself, ma'am." Then he got in his truck and drove away. I want to tell you what the divorce did and didn't do, because I think it matters. It took just over 6 months. Lauren was a surgeon. She used the forensic report not as a sledgehammer but as a scalpel, and every time Ryan's attorney tried to argue that the agency card spending was somehow ambiguous, she had a receipt, a date, a corresponding entry from his geolocated phone records that we'd subpoenaed in month 2. By month 4, Ryan was no longer arguing. He was negotiating to stop leading. In the end, he got $54,000 as his share of marital equity in the house, structured as a buyout over 36 months, offset against the documented financial misconduct and the partial repayment Lauren successfully argued he owed the agency. He got his car, he got his clothes, he got the road bike, which he had never ridden. He got nothing from Field and Foundry, which Lauren argued was substantially separate property, with documented independent growth, and the judge agreed without much fuss. The non-business charges he'd made on the agency card were classified by the court as misappropriation of business funds and added back into the marital estate as my separate asset before division. He kept asking, through his attorney, whether I would consider mediation. I said no every time. We did not need to mediate. We had a paper trail. Megan, I learned later through a mutual acquaintance, left him in November when she found out he wasn't getting what he'd told her he would get. The baby was born in March, a boy, and I hope with my whole heart that child grows up healthy and surrounded by people who love him. None of this was his. Diane and I had coffee in February, a month before the divorce was final. She was the one who reached out. We met at a place in Lakewood and she cried twice. She told me she had spent 43 years apologizing for her son and that she was done. We are not close now, but we send each other birthday cards, and last Mother's Day she sent me a small ceramic bird with a note that said for the woman who showed me what dignity looks like. I keep it on the bookshelf in my office. My parents found out in August after the filing was public record. My father drove 4 hours to my house unannounced. He brought a cooler of brisket from the place near Tyler I love. He didn't ask me a single question. He just sat on my porch with me for 2 hours and ate sandwiches and watched the sunset behind the pecan tree. Before he left, he said, "Your mother and I are proud of you, Hannah Marie. We were proud of you before. We are more proud of you now." Then he got in his truck and drove home. Field and Foundry had its best year ever in 2025. We closed 2 new national retainers, hired 3 senior strategists, and moved out of the office on McKinney into a slightly bigger space near the design district with better light. I promoted prior to Q2 COO and gave her equity, which I should have done 18 months earlier. She cried in my office and then immediately apologized for crying, which is the most Priya thing she has ever done. I sold the house this spring. I got $642,000 for it, which was almost $200,000 more than I paid in 2021. I bought a smaller place in Lakewood just for me, with a screened porch and a kitchen with morning light and a tiny backyard where I have planted, on purpose this time, a fig tree. My agency reserve sits at just over $900,000. My credit score is 82. I am 34 years old next month. I do not have any advice about love. I am not the woman to give it. But I have one thing I want to say to whoever is sitting wherever you're sitting, watching this, recognizing something. If you have a small voice in the back of your head that has been trying to get your attention for months, about a person, about a marriage, about a feeling you can't name, please listen to it. Listen to it before the evidence is undeniable. Listen to it even when the only thing it can give you is a vague unease. Open a separate account. Save the password somewhere only you can find. Put an attorney's name in your phone under a fake label. None of this means you don't love your partner. None of this means you don't love your partner. None of this means you expect the worst. It means you have noticed that you are the kind of person who builds things, and you have decided that the things you build deserve to be protected, including yourself. The morning Ryan told me about Megan, I had been ready for 9.5 weeks. He thought he was telling me a story I had never heard. I had been writing it down the whole time. Some doors you have to close yourself. The good news is, once you do, you find out you have always had the key. I've thought a lot about why Ryan was so sure I wouldn't fight back. Not why he cheated. Men cheat for 1,000 small reasons and none of them are worth examining for very long, but why he was so certain I would roll over. Why he told his mother Diane that he expected me to be fair because he thought I would feel guilty for working too much. Why he booked the Kabul flight on my company card and never even bothered to hide it carefully. The honest answer is that I taught him to think that way. For 9 years I made it easy. I paid for the wedding and called it generosity. I bought the house and said his credit didn't matter. I gave him a corporate card and called it convenience. Every time I absorbed a cost without asking him to share it, every time I smoothed a wrinkle without naming it, I was telling him a story about who I was and what I could be expected to tolerate. He listened to that story for a long time. By the time he met Megan, he believed it, the way you believe in gravity. That's the cause and effects part, the part nobody likes to talk about. We don't get to choose how other people behave, but we do get to choose how clearly we draw the line of what we will and won't carry for them. And when we don't draw that line, people will draw it for us, usually in a place that benefits them. I think about 3 things now, every single day. The first is integrity, not the public kind. The private kind, where you keep paying for Diane's medication anyway because she is an old woman with a heart condition and her son's choices are not her body's fault. The kind where you don't take the lower road just because the lower road is open. The second is clarity. I should have called Lauren in 2020, not 2024. I should have noticed the cologne in 2022. I should have asked harder questions about the road bike he never rode. Smart isn't about being clever after the fact. Smart is about respecting the small voice in the back of your head when it's still a whisper, before it has to start screaming. The third is the one I had to learn the hard way. It's the quiet, durable kind of strength that doesn't look like anything from the outside. It looked like me sitting on a kitchen floor for 11 minutes and then standing back up. It looked like 4 ordinary days of pasta and pajama pants while Lauren built the case. It looked like a conference room smile across a kitchen island. None of it was dramatic. All of it was the work. If anything I've said tonight has reached you, I hope it's this. You are allowed to build something. You are allowed to protect it. And you are allowed, when the time comes, to close the door yourself.